Welcome back to Peerless Martial God. Chapter 25. The power within the Ling Qi layer. 10 days later, Lin Feng's qi had become much stronger. There was a brilliant milky white aura around him as he sat meditating. Outside his training cave there were two silhouettes in the distance who were getting closer and closer to the cave in which Lin Feng was cultivating. This is such a nice place. It's so peaceful and quiet. This place would be extremely beneficial to our cultivation, said the young man who saw the cave. He couldn't help himself but smile radiantly. Shui, should we practice here? I thought you didn't want to practice, said the girl standing next to him who was radiating sex appeal. She was wearing a skin-tight red robe which looked like a gentle fire was hugging all of her curves. She was extremely attractive. Hee, when I'm with the incredibly beautiful Shui and have such beautiful scenery around, then wouldn't it be more fun to press you between my legs rather than do something boring like training? The young man was incredibly thin and pale. He didn't look like a cultivator. The girl wearing the tight red robes looked at the young man with a hint of disdain. She didn't refuse the opportunity to train though. Cultivators required extremely large amounts of money when training because to have access to weapons and profound pills of high quality, it would require extremely large sums of money. If you were born from an ordinary family and didn't dare to go hunt and kill some ferocious wild beasts, it was impossible for you to receive the help of such treasures. The girl who was wearing the skin-tight red robe could be seen with a glance to not have much talent, and her family was probably commoners or of very low status. Because she wanted to improve quickly on the patch of cultivation, she stuck together with the thin young guy, no matter how unpleasant it was. Lu Fei was 18 years old and had reached the 9th Qi layer. He could borrow the forces from the elements and was naturally talented. His status was also secured by his brother, Lu Liang, who was an elite disciple of the sect. Therefore the young girl, Shui Huan, would have sexual relations with Lu Fei so that she could get some profound pills for training and at the same time could enjoy carnal pleasures. When they entered the cave, they saw Lin Feng sitting in a meditative position and cultivating. They looked at each other with a confused look. They would never have thought that this cave far away from the view of others would be occupied for training. It seems like we have to find another place, Shui Huan said with regret. Find another place? Why? I can tell he is at the 8th Qi layer. I will make him go somewhere else to train, said Lu Fei shaking his head. It's not good to disturb others' training, said Shui Huan politely smiling. Chill out, that guy's strength is low, he's weak. Wait here, I'll go cripple his cultivation for ruining the mood before I throw him out of here, said Lu Fei with an evil smile on his face. There were some strong cultivators who would attack weak cultivators practicing in caves for no other reason than causing them a minor irritation. It was a risky thing to do though, because if these weak cultivators became strong, they would seek revenge, so even some cruel cultivators didn't dare and do it. Those who still did these types of attacks would cruelly cripple the opponent's cultivation to stop any chances of revenge. Shui Huan giggled and just nodded without saying anything. She agreed because people who went to caves were very few and a cave was really a great place to practice. Only the strong could use those benefits. Little boy, wake up, said Lu Fei in a cold mocking tone while sensing Lin Feng's qi. Lin Feng opened his eyes. There was an incredibly cold killing intent which filled the cave. He had been woken up by Lu Fei and Shui Huan when they had come into the cave, but he thought they would leave without bothering his training. It seemed like his thoughts were a bit too simplistic. These people's intentions were worse than what he could imagine. He had heard them discussing what their intentions were. Do you want to kick me out and cripple my cultivation? Asked Lin Feng coldly. If you heard what I said, then get moving and cripple your cultivation yourself. If you do it yourself it will be less painful, said Lu Fei. Very good, said Lin Feng nodding. He stood up right after and slowly walked towards Lu Fei. You haven't crippled your own cultivation and you think you can just walk away, said Lu Fei smiling coldly to Lin Feng who was about to leave. Did I ever say that I was planning to leave? Said Lin Feng with a teasing expression on his face. He suddenly stamped on the ground which made the entire cave shake. Right after, Lin Feng flew out of the cave at incredible speed directly at Lu Fei. Huh? Lu Fei frowned, as he had suddenly seen the fist that was flying towards him. Boom! Lu Fei's arm broke into pieces and was hanging loosely from his shoulder. A devilish hand appeared around his neck and lifted him off the ground. I want to ask you, how did you intend to cripple my cultivation? Asked Lin Feng looking at Lu Fei. His body was emitting a cold and deathly qi. Shui Huan looked pale. She had never expected Lin Feng to be this strong. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I didn't know you were so strong. Let me go please, I will just leave peacefully. Lu Fei grabbed Lin Feng's arm with his hand. He was trying to make Lin Feng let go of his neck. His voice was shaky and he was struggling to breathe. Do you think that saying you know you were wrong is enough? Lu Fei thought he was the stronger cultivator at the beginning. He wanted to cripple Lin Feng's cultivation and then force him from the training cave so he could do immoral acts with the young girl. At that moment he knew he couldn't escape. Saying that he knew he was wrong, would it really be enough? That would be too easy. If Lin Feng had indeed been weaker than Lu Fei would have already crippled his cultivation. If you want to cripple other people's cultivation, you must take into consideration that they may be able to cripple yours as well, said Lin Feng punching Lu Fei Dantian with incredible force. which made him shoot through the air and land heavily on the ground several meters away. Lin Feng then looked at Shui Huan standing on the other side and shouted at her, "Get lost." Shui Huan was shaking a little. She ran out towards Lu Fei and helped him leave the cave together with her. "You dare to cripple my cultivation, I can only be satisfied with your death," shouted a voice outside of the cave. Lin Feng ignored the shouts and kept practicing. But then, shortly after, he was interrupted again. Lu Fei and Huan Shui had come back, and this time, they had brought another disciple with them. This disciple seemed to be 19 years old. He resembled Lu Fei a bit, but his face looked like that of an eagle. He looked even more evil than Lu Fei. "Bro, that bastard broke my arm. He also crippled my cultivation. Go and kill him for me," Lu Fei said as his face was twisted in anger like a demon. "Don't worry, I will cripple his cultivation, break both his arms and legs, which will be your revenge," Lu Lian said while staring at Lin Feng, which gave him the feeling that a fierce animal was gazing at him. "Alright," said Lu Fei while nodding. Lin Feng frowned. Even though Lu Liang hadn't shown his chi yet, Lin Feng could feel, by looking at Lu Liang's eyes, that he was much stronger than Lu Fei, and even stronger than Jing Hao, who was ranked 6th within the ordinary disciples. "You dared cripple my brother's cultivation, I will show you how terrible the consequences are," said Lu Lian to Lin Feng. Lin Feng said nothing and took a few steps forward. The energy in his entire body suddenly changed and became oppressively powerful. The entire atmosphere around them began to fill with insanely strong waves of energy. Lin Feng had used his 9 heavy waves, which made the entire space around them vibrate. The air around them began to howl with the power emitted by these waves. Lin Feng, who was at the 8th chi layer, could use his 9 heavy waves to increase the power of his strikes, and they could emit strength beyond 9,000 jin. It could even reach 9,500 jin at times. Each of his attacks would be extremely powerful. "You intentionally hide your skills as a cultivator to target those weaker, and you even crippled my brother's cultivation, but your strength is still not enough to fight against me." When Lu Liang felt Lin Feng's power, he thought that he was actually at the 9th chi layer. He had thought that it was due to his brother's ignorance. His brother enjoyed that young girl's presence and had offended a strong cultivator while he was training. A blood-curdling shout suddenly burst through the atmosphere. Lu Liang was the one that had shouted. It didn't sound like a sound a human could make at all. It sounded like the howl of an extremely violent, ferocious beast. Lu Liang had transformed his hand into claws, and his chi was turning into demonic chi. As 9 heavy waves touched the claw, Lin Feng immediately retreated and looked at his own hand. His skin was ripped off and there was blood. His hand in that brief encounter had become extremely painful. "Ling Chi layer," said Lin Feng while looking at Lu Liang. Lin Feng could already carry out attacks with a strength of 9,500 jin, but Lu Liang could stop them. Lin Feng knew that his opponent had already surpassed the original chi layer of strength. "You're finally regretting what you've done now, what a pity. It's already too late," said Lu Liang mockingly. He didn't deny that he had already reached the Ling Chi layer. He actually had reached this level of strength a few months before. He was extremely strong. When releasing his chi outside of his body, he could greatly increase his power. A cultivator of the chi layer had no chance against a cultivator of the Ling Chi layer. "I regret indeed. I regret that I didn't kill Lu Fei a moment ago and spared his pathetic little life," Lin Feng said while unsheathing his long sword from his back. He started moving extremely quickly using his moonlight feather agility. It was better to fight than die while cowering. Thunderous roars started spreading throughout the atmosphere of the mountain. Lin Feng's long sword started to glow with a radiant light and thrust towards Lu Liang, about to stab him. Lu Liang couldn't avoid the attack. His claws like hooks immediately faced the sword and grabbed it before it could stab through his body. The collision between Lin Feng's long sword and Lu Liang's claws created an explosion of power. Lin Feng's sword was pushed slightly aside. "Roaring thunder," shouted Lin Feng. His sword emitted a whistling sound and then a rumbling noise. When Lu Liang's claws touched Lin Feng's sword, Lu Liang felt a strong and violent power resembling the power of a storm. Lin Feng's long sword looked like the wind. The sound of the sword coupled with the sound of the thunderous roars was extremely terrifying to the onlookers. Boom! A strong force was emitted. Lu Liang suddenly released his spirit. It was a mighty eagle spirit which fell within the category of beast spirits. The eagle spirit was an extremely violent and wild spirit. Chu Zanpeng's rock spirit had more magnificence than the eagle spirit. The sound of the eagle was heard. Lu Liang's claws were glowing. The light that was glowing on his claws became a single streak of light and enveloped Lin Feng's long sword in a flash. "You cannot compete with someone of the Ling Chi layer with your level of strength," said Lu Liang, whose eyes were twinkling. He felt threatened by Lin Feng, which is why he had released his spirit. Since Lin Feng had passed the exam of the precipice of abyss, his roaring thunder was even stronger than previously. Even though Lin Feng was only at the 8th chi layer, he was as strong as other cultivators of the 9th chi layer thanks to his skillful attacks. He had really mastered all of his skills. But when Lu Liang released his eagle spirit, he became much stronger and could block Lin Feng's sword attacks using the chi from his claws. But could someone of the chi layer really not fight against someone of the Ling Chi layer? Lin Feng didn't think so, and he was certainly going to risk his life to find out. End of chapter 25. Hope you guys enjoy the chapter. Please consider subscribing and hit that bell button for future updates.